Hello everyone, I'm Ekaterina, and our grammar topic today is defining and non-defining relative clauses. So let's get started. Let's start with an example. Last week we had a party. Everyone enjoyed it. So these are two sentences. And we made one sentence out of these two by using a relative clause. Everybody who came to the party enjoyed it. Partiye gelen herkes keyif aldı. Who came to the party is a defining relative clause, and who is a relative pronoun that we use to connect a relative clause to the main clause here. You should know that there are two types of relative clauses, defining and non-defining. Now, this is an example of a defining relative clause. It defines the noun that it is connected with. Define the noun that comes before the relative clause. One more example. The course, which was started by Professor Smith, is ending next year. Which was started by Professor Smith is a relative clause, a non-defining relative clause. Now, why is it called non-defining? Because it does not define the noun which comes before that. It gives extra information about the noun, and we can omit this part of the sentence and the meaning of the sentence will not be changed without this part of the sentence. Now, today we will look closer at the differences between defining and non-defining relative clauses, and let's start with a few more examples from the video.
He wasn't shot. He was killed by a single blow to the back of the head from a blunt instrument, which then magically disappeared along with the killer. He wasn't shot. He was killed by a single blow to the back of the head from a blunt instrument, which then magically disappeared along with the killer.
I got the information you asked me for. The location of your daughter. I got the information you asked me for. The location of your daughter.
I need an architect who's as good as I was. I need an architect who's as good as I was.
I recorded 12 tapes. I started with Justin, and then Jessica, who each broke my heart. I recorded 12 tapes. I started with Justin, and then Jessica, who each broke my heart.
Okay. You see that relative clauses are very often used in spoken language. They are also often used in the written style. So that's why we use relative clauses while writing essays as well. Let's look at the examples which were mentioned in the video. He was killed by a single blow to the back of the head from a blunt instrument, which then magically disappeared. That's a non-defining relative clause. You can see a comma here. I got the information you asked me for. So, or we can also say, I got the information that or which you asked me for. And today I will also explain you when we can omit relative pronouns in relative clauses. I need an architect who is as good as I was. Yeah, again, that's a defining relative clause. Architect, which architect who is as good as I was. And the last one, I recorded 12 tapes. I started with Justin and then Jessica, who each broke my heart. That's a non-defining relative clause. We have a comma here. We can omit this part of the sentence with no change in the meaning of the sentence. It gives extra information. Okay, let's start with defining relative clauses. When do we use defining relative clauses? We use them to tell what kind of person or thing the speaker means. So these clauses answer the questions: which person or thing, what kind of person or thing. Yesterday we went to the restaurant which you recommended to us. Yeah, what kind of restaurant? The one that you recommended to us. Which or that you recommended to us. The relative clause comes after the noun it defines. Also, we use relative clause we make relative clauses with the help of pronouns: who, which, when, or that. Like in this example, I got the information you asked me for. Yeah, I got the information that you asked me for, right? Relative clauses help us to avoid repetition. Yeah. So instead of two sentences, instead of repeating the same word, instead of repeating the word information, we can make one sentence by using relative pronoun, and our speech will be more fluent, and it will sound better. Defining relative clauses, as I have already told you, give us essential information about people or things. We don't use commas in defining relative clauses. The car that we bought last month is a hybrid car. Geçen ay aldığımız araba hibrit arabadır. So, no commas here. Yeah, which car? This relative clause defines the word car. Okay, let's now look at the sentences with that, which, who, whom, or whose. When do we use these relative pronouns? In which cases? Who, whom, or that, we use them for people. When we speak about people, I thanked the woman who helped me. The man whom I saw at the cinema last night is a lawyer. Are you the person that I spoke to yesterday? Please remember that whom can be used only when it is the object of the relative clause. So we cannot use whom here, for example, because here who is the subject of the relative clause, not the object, okay? But who can be used in both positions. It can be used as a subject or as an object of a relative clause. We can also say the man who I saw at the cinema last night is a lawyer. Which or that is used for things. That's the machine which or that makes paper. Yesterday we went to the restaurant which you recommended to us. Which or that. Whose is used when we speak about possession. he is the teacher whose students get the best grades. Yeah, this teacher's students, his students, right? What we want to say is his students get the best grades. So his is possessive, yeah, and we use whose instead of his actually, yeah, whose students. That's the possessive pronoun, relative pronoun. That's the shop whose windows were smashed. Now, we can use whose not only for people but also for things, for objects, in the possessive form. Again, this shop windows, yeah, the shop's windows. That's what we are trying to say in this sentence. That's why we use whose. That's the possessive form. Let's continue. So, relative pronouns. They can be, yeah, the relative pronouns that we have just discussed with you. They can be in the position of subject and object in the sentences. Now, let's take a look at subject relative clauses first. The girl who won was really happy. So, by who we mean the girl. Yeah, the girl won. The girl is the subject of the sentence. So that's why who is also the subject of the sentence. That's the parrot that talks. By that we mean the parrot. Yeah, the parrot talks, and the parrot is the subject of the sentence. So that's why that is also the subject of the sentence. Now, why is it important to know if a relative pronoun is a subject or an object of the sentence? That's important because if it's a subject of the sentence, we cannot omit who, that, or which, or when. Okay, we cannot omit those relative pronouns. But when who, which, or that, when these relative pronouns are the object of the sentence, we can omit them. Now look at these examples. The woman who I served was very rude. Yeah, who, by who, we mean the woman, which is the object. Yeah, I is the subject, served is the verb, the woman is the object. They sold the car that we wanted. We wanted the car. That is the object, because by that we mean the car. Yeah, we is the subject, wanted is the verb, the car is the object. So in this case, we can omit, we can leave out relative pronouns, and we can also say like this: the woman I served was rude. They sold the car we wanted. These sentences are correct. There are no mistakes in them. So just remember that when relative pronouns who, that, which are in the position of the object, we can also leave them out. We can omit them. Okay, let's continue with the adverbs of place and time. Basically, we use where and when very often. And we can also use which plus preposition as the adverbs of place and time. Now let's look at the place. Yeah, Here is a sentence. I like the house where I was born. Yeah, where describes the place here. The house where I was born. I was born there, right? This is what we want, what we're trying to say. That's an adverb of place. Yeah, it defines the place. What about time? 1923 is the year when the Republic of Turkey was founded. It was founded then, at that time. Yeah, when is the adverb of time? The year, which year? When the Republic of Turkey was founded. However, we can also use which, yeah, with places, the house, and with dates, with time, like in this case, a year. So you should be careful about the meaning of the sentence. Now let's look at these sentences together. I like the house which has a large garden. So in this case, which is not an adverb of place. But what we mean, yeah, we're speaking about the house, it has a large garden, yeah? We are defining the house not as a place, but we give a characteristic. We give a characteristic of this house, yeah? Okay. And in this case, by the way, which is the subject of the sentence, right? It can also be used as an object. I liked the house which we saw yesterday. So again, which does not describe the place. Yeah, we have the house here, but we are not describing the place. We again speak about the house as something that we saw. Yeah, the house, we saw it yesterday. That's the object. The same happens with time. That's a year which has an important place in Turkish history, which is the subject of this relative clause. And we are not speaking about time here, but we give characteristic to the year. Yeah, it has an important place. Do you remember the day which I told you? Yeah, again, the day which I told you about that day. That's not about the time, but again, about we're trying to give the characteristic to that day. That's why be careful with the meaning of the sentence, with the meaning that the sentence conveys. Think about the meaning in general. Let's continue. Sometimes we can also use preposition plus which instead of where or when in sentences. But please remember that we always need a preposition. That's the spot where the statue will be built. Yeah, that's okay with where. Or we can also say, that's the spot at which the statue will be built. At which. Or we can also use the preposition at the end of the sentence and start with which. That's the spot which the statue will be built at. All these sentences are correct. What about time? Again, we can use preposition plus which with the time. That was the year when I graduated. Or we can say, that was the year in which I graduated. Both sentences are correct. But please be careful with this type of sentences with the prepositions when we use where or when, yeah. In the sentences, we do not use prepositions. The house, that's the house where I was born. No preposition needed. That's the hotel where we stayed. Yeah, no preposition needed because we have where here. Prepositions are used only with which. Please be careful about that. Now let's have some exercises for practice. We have two sentences here, and we need to use relative pronouns or adverbs of place and time to make one sentence out of two. Let's make a relative clause together. A building was destroyed in a fire. It has now been rebuilt. So what do you think? What will the sentence look like, and which relative pronoun we need in this case? The building that or which was destroyed in a fire has now been rebuilt. Yeah. Please be careful that here in the relative clause it's a one sentence and the article has been changed. Yeah. Instead of an indefinite article, we have a definite article now because we have a sentence, we have a clause that defines this noun, and that's why we need a definite article here. Yeah, so we know which building we're speaking about. The building that was destroyed in a fire. A bus goes to the airport. It runs every half hour. The bus that or which runs every half hour goes to the airport. Yeah, that's the sentence that we have. That's the sentence with a relative clause. Yeah, that or which. Both are possible. Both relative pronouns are okay here. We helped some people. Their car had broken down. Now, what do you think? Which relative pronoun do we need here? We helped the people whose car had broken down. Whose, because that's a possession, right? That's why we use whose here. One more sentence. I live in a friendly village. Everybody knows everybody else. So, how do we make a sentence with a relative clause out of these two sentences? Like this. I live in a friendly village where everybody knows everybody else. Where defines a place, yeah? Where defines this village. That's why we use where in this relative clause. Okay, let's continue with non-defining relative clauses. So what is the difference between defining and non-defining relative clauses? Let's at first take a look with at the clauses with relative pronouns. Yeah, which, that, who. So look at the first sentence, at the first example. We stayed at the hotel which you recommended. That's a defining relative clause. Yeah, which defines the hotel. Yeah. If we don't use this part, we won't understand which hotel we stayed at. But look at this sentence here. We stayed at the Park Hotel, which you recommended. Now we have the name of the hotel here. We already know which hotel they stayed at. And which you recommended is something extra. This information is extra because we understand from the main clause which hotel is being spoken about. Yeah, extra information. Okay, the second sentence here. The woman who lives next door to me is a doctor. Now, this information, who lives next door to me, yeah, this information is essential. We cannot omit it. And we do not use commas here, yeah, no commas. However, this one, my brother Ben, who lives in Hong Kong, is an architect. We have a name here. We already know who who we are speaking about. Yeah, about Ben. Who lives in Hong Kong is extra. This information is extra. That's why we use commas here. Okay, what else? Do you know anyone who or that speaks Italian? Yeah, we can use who or that in defining relative clauses. And we can also omit who or that. Yeah, we can also omit relative pronouns if they are the object of the sentence. However, look at this one. John, who speaks French and Italian, works as a tour guide. Yeah, that's a non-defining relative clause, and we cannot use that in non-defining relative clauses. Never. We have commas again, and relative pronouns who, which cannot be omitted. We always use them in non-defining relative clauses. I hope that's clear. Now, what about the adverbs of place and time? Let's look at the examples here. Again, we can use them with non-defining relative clauses as where. Lyon, where I grew up, is a big city. Yeah, where is an adverb of place or time here. Now, again, the same problem exists with non-defining relative clauses. You should pay attention to the meaning that we are trying to convey with the sentence. Lyon, which is known as the capital of gastronomy, is located in France. So by which we mean that it is known as the capital of gastronomy. It's not an adverb of place here, right? It does not define the place, but it gives information about the capital of gastronomy here. And again, if we use it as an object, the sentence will look like this. Lyon, which we visited last year, is a beautiful city. Yeah, we visited it last year. That's the meaning of which. You cannot use where here. The same happens with time, with the adverbs of time. December, when Christmas is celebrated, is a summer month for the southern hemisphere. So December, that's the time. Yeah, we're speaking about the time here. It is celebrated at that. Christmas is celebrated at that time. That's why we use when here. Yeah, be careful with the meaning of the sentence, because if we speak about my favorite month, about December as a favorite month, we must use which. December, which is my favorite month of the year, is a summer month for the southern hemisphere. Or if which is an object, the sentence can look like this. December, which I told you to be my favorite month, is a summer month in the southern hemisphere. I told you that. Yeah, this is what we mean by which. Not the time, but we give extra we give additional characteristic about this month, December. Now, what about which? There is one more important thing with which can also refer to a whole sentence. Sarah lent Jim her camera, which was practically new, and in this case, which refers to the camera only, to this word, yeah? The camera was new. But look at this sentence. Sarah lent Jim her camera, which was very kind. So which in this case refers to the whole sentence. Yeah, we describe Sarah's behavior here. We evaluate her behavior, which in this case is used to evaluate the information that we have. So please do remember that in some cases which can also refer to a whole sentence, not to one word only. Okay, it's important to know that we do not use pronouns, yeah, we do not repeat pronouns in the relative clauses, yeah. We use relative pronouns in relative clauses only. The man who was sitting next to me had a blue jacket, yeah. We do not use he again, yeah. We do not repeat he in the sentence with the relative clause because we have who instead of he. The man who was sitting next to me, he had a blue jacket. No, that's not correct. So be careful about that. Do not repeat pronouns. One more important thing, well, one more example. He lent me his book. I found it very interesting. He lent me his book, which I found very interesting. That's okay. But please do not use it. Do not repeat, yeah, it in the relative clause just because we have a relative pronoun already. We have which. We do not need it here. So be careful with that. And one more important thing, I have already mentioned it, but let me explain it one more time. That's a non-defining relative clause. Claire, who I work with, is doing the London Marathon this year. We cannot omit who in non-defining relative clauses, okay? Claire, I work with, no, that's not correct. Always use relative pronouns or adverbs of time in the non-defining relative clauses. Okay, let's continue with a few exercises for practice. And that will be, these exercises will be the last ones for today. Now, we should correct the sentences where necessary. Let's look at the first sentence in the example. Anna told me about her new job that she's enjoying very much. Now, what kind of sentence we have here? Yeah? We have which and we have comma. Is this correct? No. This is not correct. The first sentence is not correct. Yeah, we cannot use that that's a non-defining, by the way, that's a non-defining relative clause, extra information, right? We cannot use that in non-defining relative clauses, and we need a comma. What about number 2? Is this sentence correct? Please read it. My office that is on the 2nd floor is very small. Are there any mistakes in this sentence? What do you think? Yes, there are 2 mistakes. Yeah, 2 commas are missing. And actually 3, I'm sorry, because instead of that, we must use which. That's a non-defining relative clause. We cannot use that in non-defining relative clauses. My office, which is on the 2nd floor, is very small. This is the correct sentence. Okay, number 3. The office that I'm using at the moment is very small. Is this sentence correct? Yes. No mistakes here, yeah? The office that I'm using at the moment is a defining relative clause. Which office? We cannot understand which office without this relative clause, so that's a defining relative clause. Number 4, Sarah's father that used to be in the army now works for a TV company. Are there any mistakes in this sentence? Yes, there are. Now here is the correct version. Sarah's father, who used to be in the army, now works for a TV company. We have commas because this is additional information, and who instead of that. We cannot use that in non-defining relative clauses. 5. The doctor that examined me couldn't find anything wrong. Are there any mistakes in this sentence? No, that's correct. No mistakes. That examined me, that's a defining relative clause. No commas. 6. The sun that is one of millions of stars in the universe provides us with heat and light. Any mistakes here? Any missing commas maybe? Yes. Again, the commas are missing. And here is the correct variant. The sun, which is one of the million stars in the universe, which instead of that provides us with heat and light. Okay, I hope you did all the sentences correctly. Now, I have one more exercise for practice here, and that's a text about Frida Kahlo. Well, I guess most of you know about her life and her paintings, and in the text we need to use suitable relative pronouns and commas if necessary. Please read the text on your own first, and then we will do the text together. You can pause the video now. Okay. Now let's look at the answers, and I'm going to read the text to you. The artist Frida Kahlo, who died in 1954, is becoming more and more popular. Yeah, non-defining extra information. As a child, she suffered from polio which left her right leg thinner than her left leg. Again, this information is extra. One day, when she was 18, a bus, which or that she was traveling in, was hit by a car. This information is not extra, that's important for us. Yeah, which bus? After the accident, she had several injuries which affected her for the rest of her life. Yeah, which was a comma here. This is extra information. This information is extra. Later, she met Diego Garcia, whose paintings she very much admired. A comma and whose. Garcia encouraged her, and later they got married, which didn't please Frida's family. A comma and which. During her lifetime, she was considered less important than her husband, but today she receives the recognition which or that she deserves. Or we can also omit which or that in this case, and we can say, today she receives the recognition she deserves. Right? Now, I hope at the end of the video you know everything about defining and non-defining relative clauses. And thank you for watching. And that's all for today.